The winter of 1918 tastes like metal and smoke. Across the mud-choked trenches of Europe, a dying empire breathes its last. Germany, once roaring, unstoppable, almost divine in its precision and fury, now trembles like a wounded beast in the cold. The thunder of artillery has become a kind of background music, the heartbeat of an age gone mad. The soldiers, ghostly beneath their helmets, stare into the grey horizon where victory was supposed to come from, but never did. It's over, though no one dares say it aloud. You can feel it in the silence between the shells, in the look of the officers, in the way men write their letters home. Something has broken, and the mighty German war machine, built on iron, discipline, and dreams of destiny, is bleeding out. But this was not how it was meant to end. For years, Germany had seemed invincible. The Kaiser's legions marched with clockwork precision, their banners fluttering in the smoke, their generals hailed as modern gods of war. They had crushed enemies on every front, seized cities, shattered armies. They had rewritten the rules of modern conflict. So how does a nation so powerful, so sure of itself, fall apart so completely? The answer doesn't come in a single moment. It comes in whispers, in exhaustion, in small cracks that spread until the whole thing collapses. It's not one battle, not one failure. It's the slow death of belief. It begins with hunger. Not the hunger of ambition, but the hunger of empty stomachs. The British blockade, tight, relentless, invisible, has strangled Germany for years. No food, no fuel, no supplies. Mothers boil grass for soup, children faint in schoolrooms. The army eats horses, then dogs, then rats, and still the generals demand victory. The soldiers at the front, gaunt and hollow-eyed, fight on instinct. They no longer believe in glory. They believe in surviving the next barrage. Every day, the trenches claim another generation. The air smells of rot and cordite, the stench of empire decaying in real time. The officers tell them the fatherland endures. The fatherland, but what is left of it? Behind the lines, revolution whispers. Workers strike, sailors mutiny. In the shipyards of Kiel, men raise red flags and refuse orders. The Kaiser's empire, the proud, orderly, militarized heart of Europe, starts to fracture under its own weight. The war that was supposed to be swift and righteous has become a 4-year suicide pact. The generals, Ludendorff, Hindenburg, keep promising one final push, one more offensive to break the deadlock, and for a moment it almost works. Spring 1918, the German army unleashes Operation Michael, a storm of artillery and shock troops, slicing through the British lines with terrifying speed. The old blitzkrieg before the word existed. For a few brief weeks, it feels like 1914 again. The German Eagle soars. The trenches are abandoned. Paris lies within reach. The world holds its breath. But then the machine stops. There are no reserves left, no food, no ammunition. The soldiers, half starved and half insane, collapse where they stand. They've marched further than their supply lines, faster than their nation can follow. And the enemy, they're learning. The Allies adapt. Fresh American troops pour into France, young and well, fed and burning with the certainty of a nation that has not yet learned to fear war. Germany, meanwhile, is fighting on fumes. In the shadows of victory, defeat grows like mold. The skies are filled with planes now, roaring monsters of steel that rain death on trenches and towns alike. The ground itself has become a graveyard of machines. Men are swallowed by the earth, dissolved by gas, shredded by artillery that never stops. There are no heroes here anymore, only survivors. And then, August, the Allies strike back. The 100 Days offensive, a relentless tide pushing the Germans backward, mile by mile, trench by trench. The empire begins to crumble from within. The once proud officers can't make sense of it. Their maps no longer matter. Their lines dissolve. Men surrender in the thousands. For the first time, the German army, the great feared machine of Europe, breaks. But still, they tell themselves it's temporary. Still, They say it's strategy. Until one day the truth becomes undeniable. They've lost the initiative. They've lost the war. The question is no longer if, but how long before the end. In Berlin, panic spreads. The streets fill with rumors, with protesters, with the stench of desperation. The Kaiser's portraits are defaced. The once unshakable faith in the monarchy evaporates like mist. And in the trenches, the men begin to talk, not of orders or tactics, but of home. They're tired of dying for a dream they no longer understand. Some tear off their insignia, others just walk away. The empire has sent its sons to die for glory. Now those sons are returning, broken, angry, and betrayed. This is how great powers fall, not with a single battle cry, but with the slow unraveling of belief. The system that bound Germany together, duty, hierarchy, obedience, turns to dust under the weight of exhaustion. Ludendorff himself begins to crack. The architect of victories becomes the prophet of doom. He rages, he blames politicians, he demands total war even as the nation starves. He wants to fight on, to the last man, the last bullet, the last breath. But the people have nothing left to give. On the front, rumors spread faster than orders. The Americans are endless. The British tanks unstoppable. The French reborn. Each rumor chips away at morale until the German soldier begins to see himself not as the hammer, but as the nail. The war that began with parades and songs now ends in whispers and silence. In the shadows of a dying autumn, the German High Command finally admits what they've known for months. They can't win. The generals tell the Kaiser the truth, though not to his face. He's isolated now, surrounded by flatterers and ghosts. His empire has become a corpse, still twitching. And somewhere in a dark room, the decision is made: seek an armistice. But even surrender requires a scapegoat. Someone must bear the shame. Someone must explain how a nation of iron fell to dust. The knives begin to sharpen, not on the front, but in the halls of power. The generals whisper that it's not their fault. They say the army was undefeated in the field, that it was betrayed from within, by civilians, by revolutionaries, by Jews, by anyone but themselves. And thus, even in defeat, the seeds of another tragedy are sown. The empire may die, but the myths that will follow it are already alive. As autumn deepens, the German army retreats across a scarred, dying continent. Villages are ash, rivers run brown with silt and blood. The soldiers who survive this retreat will never be the same again. They march not toward home, but toward a void. Each step echoes with questions that will haunt the next generation. How could this have happened? Who betrayed us? What did we fight for? And beneath those questions lies a darker one still. What comes next? Because when a nation like Germany, disciplined, proud, and humiliated, falls to its knees, it does not stay down for long. In the ashes of this defeat, something terrible is beginning to stir. The world just doesn't know it yet. The war to end all wars has only just planted the seeds of the next. The world is broken, but history is still hungry. It always is. The autumn fog clings to the ruins of Europe like a shroud. The guns are still firing in the distance, but everyone knows it's only echoes now. Germany is collapsing, not just at the front, but in the heart, in the mind. The machine that once seemed eternal is rusting in real time. In Berlin, a city built on order and obedience, chaos slithers through the streets. Soldiers returning from the front find a homeland they no longer recognize. Their uniforms, once a symbol of pride, now mark them as ghosts of a lost cause. Factories stand silent, fields untended. Hunger has replaced patriotism as the national language. You can hear the city breathing heavy and uneven, like a dying man trying to remember how to live. The Kaiser still sits in his palace, staring at maps that no longer matter. His eyes are tired, his confidence gone. His dreams of empire, of shining legions marching beneath his banner, are dissolving in the smoke of a world he cannot control. He speaks of destiny and divine will, but even he can feel the walls closing in. The people no longer cheer. The newspapers no longer lie convincingly. The generals whisper in rooms lit by dying lamps, arguing over how to lose a war without admitting defeat. Outside, the revolution is already here. It doesn't march, it spreads like fire. In Kiel, the sailors refuse to sail on a suicide mission. They raise the red flag and shout for peace, for bread, for freedom. Within days, the rebellion spreads to Hamburg, Munich, Cologne. Workers flood the streets, demanding an end to the madness. The old empire, with its polished boots and polished lies, begins to crumble under the weight of reality. For 4 years, Germany was told it was winning. Now, in a single week, that illusion dies. The Kaiser flees. The generals retreat to their country estates. And in the void, a new flag rises, the flag of the Republic. But peace is not peace. The armistice that ends the fighting feels less like salvation and more like humiliation. The German people, starved and broken, are told they have lost, but they do not understand how. They had been told victory was near. They had been told the army was undefeated. They had been told the enemy was on the brink. And suddenly, the war is over and Germany is on its knees. It feels like betrayal. The soldiers who return home are not greeted as heroes. They are met with suspicion, resentment, even hatred. Their medals mean nothing in a land without food. They left as warriors and return as refugees, trudging through cities that look more like cemeteries. The Kaiser's statues still stand, but his name is already a curse. The Republic inherits not a country, but a wound. The armistice is signed in a railway car in the forests of Compiègne, a quiet, unremarkable place, yet it becomes the stage for the humiliation of a nation. The German delegates, pale, exhausted men in civilian clothes, sit beneath the cold gaze of Marshal Foch. The terms are brutal. Germany must disarm, surrender its fleet, withdraw from occupied lands. The Allies dictate and Germany listens. There is no negotiation, only submission. Outside, rain falls on the mud, mixing with tears and memory. The signing takes minutes, but the bitterness will last for generations. When word reaches Berlin, there is no celebration, only confusion. The people wander the streets as if waking from a fever dream. The war is over. But the hunger remains. The despair remains. The anger? Oh, the anger is just beginning. The Weimar Republic is born in this darkness. A fragile experiment in democracy built on the bones of an empire. It promises freedom, but few believe it. To many, it feels like a trick, a disguise for defeat. The politicians who sign the peace are branded as traitors. The November criminals, they're called. Those who stabbed Germany in the back. The myth spreads like infection that the army never lost, that it was betrayed by weak politicians, Jews, and socialists. It's a lie. But it's a lie that comforts. It gives the people someone to hate. It gives them a reason for their suffering. And in a starving nation, hatred is easy to feed. The Treaty of Versailles arrives like a curse wrapped in paper. It demands reparations so vast that even the numbers feel unreal. It redraws borders, seizes colonies, shatters pride. It declares Germany guilty, not just of losing the war, but of causing it. The word guilt burns itself into the German soul. Every coin, every loaf of bread, every breath now carries that invisible weight. Factories grind to a halt. Inflation spirals into nightmare. A loaf of bread costs a wheelbarrow of marks. Children play with stacks of worthless paper money. Men trade suits for potatoes. Women sell wedding rings for coal. Hunger becomes normal. Despair becomes routine. And beneath it all, the question festers, who did this to us? The old generals, the ones who had led Germany into hell, now step back into the light. They wash their hands of blame and point to the new republic. It was the politicians, they say. The Jews, the Marxists, the cowards in Berlin, the myth of the stab in the back, becomes the story people want to believe. It gives the nation dignity in defeat. It turns humiliation into conspiracy, and it makes vengeance not only acceptable, but holy. In smoky beer halls, in dark corners of broken cities, men gather to whisper of revenge. They dream of restoring what was lost, of purging what they think has poisoned the nation. Among them are veterans, disillusioned and dangerous, who have seen too much death to fear any more. They talk of strength, unity, rebirth. They talk of a new Germany, forged in the fire of suffering. One of them listens more closely than the rest. His name is Adolf Hitler. But for now, he is just another angry man in a ruined world, shouting into the void. Meanwhile, in the streets, the Republic tries to survive. It fights uprisings from both left and right. Spartacists rise in Berlin. Freikorps crush them with brutal efficiency. Blood runs through the gutters of a city that cannot decide what future it wants. Democracy feels fragile, foreign, imposed. The generals may have surrendered on paper, but in spirit they have never accepted defeat. They bide their time, dreaming of revenge. Across the countryside, returning soldiers find nothing to return to. Farms abandoned, families scattered, futures stolen. The empire that once promised glory now leaves only graves. They bury their comrades with trembling hands and ask the question that every nation must one day face: what happens when the myth of invincibility dies? The answer, as always, is rebirth or ruin. Germany, humiliated and hollow, begins to rebuild itself in silence. The cities rise again, but the people are changed. Something inside them has hardened. The lessons of defeat are not humility, they are rage. Rage at the world, rage at their leaders, rage at themselves. And rage is a seed that grows in darkness. By the early 1920s, the war feels like a wound that will never close. The graves are still fresh, the memories still raw. Every corner of Europe smells of death, and yet the world moves on. The victors rebuild their empires, the losers drown in debt and shame. The soldiers who once marched to the drum of the Kaiser now wander the streets like phantoms, begging, broken, forgotten. The empire that sought to dominate the world now struggles just to survive another winter. In taverns, whispers turn to speeches, speeches turn to movements, and the movements begin to dream again of power, of unity, of revenge. The war may be over, but its shadow stretches across a generation, and in that shadow, a new darkness begins to take shape, one that will make the First War seem like a prelude. Winter grips Germany like a clenched fist. The war is over, yet it lingers in every street, every home, every haunted stair. The men who came back from the front cannot forget the noise, the screaming, the thunder, the smell of burning flesh, but what haunts them more is the silence that follows, the silence of defeat, the silence of a country pretending it still has a future. The war has stripped Germany bare, not just of land or gold, but of identity. Who are they now? These people once promised greatness. The fatherland they fought for no longer exists. The Kaiser is gone, the flag changed, the empire reduced to a republic built on compromise. It feels wrong. It feels temporary. Like a nation wearing someone else's skin, the veterans walk among the ruins, eyes hollow, medals meaningless. They remember comrades dying in trenches, whispering that it was all for victory. Now, that victory has turned to ash. The politicians talk of peace, democracy, and progress, but these are words that mean nothing to men who watched the world die in mud. They feel betrayed by their leaders, by their country, by history itself. The bitterness becomes its own kind of faith. In dimly lit beer halls, voices rise over clinking glasses, angry, desperate voices. They speak of betrayal, of revenge, of redemption. They speak of the Dolchstoß, the stab in the back, a story born from lies but fueled by pain. They say the army never truly lost, that the front lines held strong until traitors at home, Jews, Marxists, pacifists, pulled the rug from beneath them. It's a myth, but a powerful one. Because myths don't need to be true. They only need to be comforting. And this one gives meaning to defeat. It gives them someone to blame. It gives them hope that maybe, just maybe, Germany was still the victim, not the villain. Meanwhile, the Weimar Republic staggers like a man walking through fire. Political chaos consumes the streets. One week it's communists trying to seize power. The next, right-wing militias marching in the name of order. Governments rise and fall in months. Inflation becomes madness. Money loses meaning. Children play with bundles of banknotes like toys, while their parents trade heirlooms for bread. The middle class, the backbone of the old empire, crumbles. Desperation drives them to listen to anyone who promises stability, pride, and vengeance. The soul of the nation is for sale, and every extremist has an offer. By 1923, Germany is on the verge of collapse again. French troops march into the Ruhr to collect unpaid reparations. German workers strike in protest, the government prints more money, and the mark dissolves into dust. A loaf of bread costs billions. People burn banknotes for warmth. Hunger becomes political. Fear becomes a language. Out of this nightmare, a new voice begins to rise. It is angry, theatrical, hypnotic. A voice that blends pain and promise into a single poison. It belongs to a failed artist, a corporal turned prophet of resentment. Adolf Hitler. He tells them what they want to hear, that they were betrayed, that the war was stolen from them, that Germany can rise again. He speaks of unity, of purity, of destiny. He gives them enemies to hate and a future to believe in. And for a nation that has lost everything, belief is more precious than bread. But this is not yet that story. This is still the story of loss, the great unmaking of a world. The German Empire had once dreamed of glory, of a place among the gods of history. Instead, it drowned in mud and blood. The generals had promised victory through discipline, science, willpower. They forgot that war is not a machine. It's a monster, and once unleashed, it devours everyone, winners and losers alike. In the end, Germany did not lose because its soldiers were weak or its generals foolish. It lost because it tried to fight a war that could not be won. A total war. Against the world, against time, against itself. The empire's strength became its weakness. Its pride blinded it. Its efficiency became obsession. Its belief in destiny turned to delusion. The war consumed the body first, the young men, the resources, the cities. Then it consumed the mind, the dreams, the faith, the certainty. By 1918, there was nothing left to burn. Only ashes remained. Yet from those ashes, something darker begins to smolder. A generation raised on death and disappointment carries the scars like inheritance. They look back at the trenches and see not horror but sacrifice, not failure but martyrdom. And they vow never to feel that humiliation again. That vow will define the next war before it even begins. For now, Germany breathes in the cold air of defeat. The fields are quiet. The trenches fill with rain. The soldiers' bones, scattered across Europe, become part of the soil itself. The empire they died for exists only in memory, ghostly, golden, untouchable. The world moves on, pretending peace has returned. But beneath that fragile calm, something ancient stirs. The same hunger that once drove nations to glory, the same madness that whispers in every heart that refuses to accept loss. The world calls it victory. Germany calls it injustice. And history calls it a pause, because peace, after all, is only ever an intermission between wars. In the end, the reason Germany lost the First World War was not just because of hunger or exhaustion or betrayal. It lost because no nation can outlast reality. It lost because dreams are mortal too. The guns may have fallen silent, but the echoes of 1918 will haunt the century to come. The peace that follows will not heal, it will rot. It will breed monsters. And when they rise, the world will remember that the Great War never truly ended. It simply changed shape. Somewhere in a small beer hall in Munich, a voice is shouting into the smoke, promising that Germany will rise again. promising revenge. The men around him listen, not because they believe, but because they need to. And as the candles flicker and the snow falls outside, history takes a slow, inevitable breath. The story of Germany's defeat is over. The story of what it became has just begun.